All right. Here we go with another weekly grasp. This one is going to be the genealogy of Noah, the next part of it. Today, we're going to focus on the third son of Noah, which is Shem. So let us get started. We're going to start off in Genesis chapter 10, verses 21. So Genesis 10:21 starts off the little paraphrase of Shem's lines. We're going to start there. And it says, and also to Shem, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Yesed the elder, children were born. The sons of Shem was Eliam and Asher and Asphaxad and Lud and Aram. And then it starts going on into the sons of Aram. So let us go through just like we normally do and do the names comparisons. And remember, just like I said in the previous videos, this is the people who helped put new landmarks, cities, and people groups together in the reformed world after the flood. So they're very important. So when I look into it, let us continue on. And the children of Aram was Uz and Hul and Gather and Mash. And Arphad begat Selah, and Selah begat Eber. And unto Eber were born two sons, and the name of one was Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided. And his brother's name was Joktan, and Joktan begat Almahad and Shelef and Kazamavet and Jerah and Hadram and Uzal and Dikla and Abal, Abimiel, and Sheba, and Ophir, and Havilah, and Yakbab. All those were sons of Yoktan. All right. So here we go. And their dwelling place was from Misha, as you go towards Sephir, a mountain of the east. And there were the sons of Shem according to their clans, according to the languages in the lands, according to their nations. These were the clans of the sons of Noah, according to their generations in their nations, and from their nations were divided on the earth after the flood. So take notice though, because when you're going through Shem's line, it's helping to give you what time frame stuff is happening in, right? So you're going through, like, these were Shem's first children, these were the grandchildren. And so the real key is verse 25, when they talk about Eber had two sons, and that the first one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided. That's all we need right there. That little piece right there is telling you a lot. Because, you know, contradictory to popular beliefs, a lot of people don't believe that most of the stories that we believe about creation, especially if you're a person who's looking and researching creation, it blows your mind. I remember 3 years ago, I had a vision. And God, Yahovah, had me to draw out these pictures. And the first picture was a blob, kind of in a circular shape, but it had no real form to it, and it was dark. And he was showing me basically Genesis chapter 1, right? When it said that it was void, without form. That was the picture. And then after that, I had to draw a second picture. And in this picture, it was a little bit more circular in shape. It was still pretty dark, but it had more of like a brown coming out and a blue coming out of the darkness, and it was more circular. And that was him telling me that, then he formed it and he shaped it, meaning the earth, and started doing what needed to be done and putting a land mass and putting water. And the third picture that I drew was crystal clear. It was the earth, but it was the earth with only one land mass that was going through the middle from bottom to top. And the waters were on the sides of it. And that was my personal thing from him saying that, when I created it, it was one land and the waters went around. And there are people that say, yes, that's exactly what happened, right? When you look at the continents, they all look like puzzle pieces. Like if they all drift back together, they will make a perfect puzzle piece, one big landmass. And that's what started my research into, let me see what the Bible really says about this. Had I not drawn those three different pictures, and I did it in one setting, it was just like blah, more circular, totally together. If I had not had that sit down and I had not had that vision and in the instruction to do those three different pictures in that thing, I probably wouldn't have done any research into really what does the Bible say about creation and dissecting it for what it is and not based on what we just were taught, especially because our teachings have secular worldview inside of it. And again, there are people that's not going to agree with that, and that is fine. But that's what was shown to me, and that's what started my journey to be able to look deeper into creationism, basically, and to see what the Bible said and how is that interpreted, not by my own, but by the words that were given. So I'm not putting my own thought into it. I'm literally taking these words off the page and say, okay, based on what this says, this is what it is. So think about that. So when we go back to chapter 11, chapter 10, verse 25. And when they talk about Eber had the two sons, and the name of the one son was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided, meaning the physical earth was divided. How we know we're not talking about just the Tower of Babel and the events that had happened already? Because when we talk about the people being spread out, it says that specifically in the Bible, what happened at the tower, right? With the people. So to say that this is when the earth was divided, meaning the physical earth was divided. Just putting a little nugget out there for y'all. Do your research. Do your research. That's all I gotta say. That's what I'm here for. Anyway, continuing. So then after that, that's when we go back and we hit that chapter 11. And we know what happened in the first part of chapter 11 because we kind of touched that last time we did the video about the tower happening in the kingdom of Shinar, who happens to be ruled by the first king of the new land, who was Nimrod, causing the people to have mixed tongue and to find each their own and to go off and live life that way. Because even Yahuwah knew they were not going to be able to be stopped if they all continued to work together like they were doing. They could reach the heavens, right? But when we go to chapter 11, verse 10, then it starts back again with that in-depth look of Shem's people. And that's what we're going to focus on today, because this is a very important group of people. Very important group of people. You see how Ham's people was a very important group of people because it set stuff. We see cities, kingdoms, and all of that forming from that one family right there. And not only, just like I told you last time, not only are there kingdoms and people groups and all of that coming out of that particular grouping of the family, but that most of them were caused for destruction when we read on in the Bible. And that's why we're taking this slow walk, because we want to get all of it. It's not just fairy tales. It's stuff that happened, documented in history. And it's for us to go and make sense of why we had the need for Yeshua to come in the first place, why we needed Jesus to come on our behalf. See, this sets it up. And I said that in the last video. So if you didn't go to that one, go to that one and get it. So let us go. It says, verse 10 of chapter 11 of Genesis. This is the genealogy of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and brought forth Arpachshad 2 years after the flood. You see how in depth it gets? The old boy was already 100. This is baby boy. This is the baby son. This is the baby of the family. He was already 100 years old, and he brought forth his child 2 years after the flood. Now, this wasn't his first child, because if we go back to Genesis 10 and you look at these are the sons of Shem, this is his third child. All right? This is his third of 5 children, because he had Eliam and he already had Asher, and then it says Arpachshad, Lud, and Aram. So we're not knowing when Eliam and Asher, so say, was born. Were they on the ark? Were they not? See, and I don't want to give my own beliefs, but based on these writings, there was more than just the mom, dad, and 3 children and their wives and stuff. And it was a huge boat. And some of them, like you said, was old. If you already 100 years old and you brought forth the child 2 years after the flood, and you already had 2 children, most likely they were on that boat. But we would have to do in-depth research to prove it. And that's why I'm keeping it like that. But my belief from reading the stuff that's been happening so far on here is that the traditional, there were only 8 people on the boat or whatever people say, I don't think it's true. I think there were more than 8 people on the boat. We just use tradition and say Noah and his sons. And then in our mind, we include the women. But in our mind, we didn't include the children. It makes sense to have women and children, especially if we have all those animals that need to be tended. Them men didn't tend it by themselves. And when you think about it again, them men and their wives probably didn't tend it by themselves. You can go tell Susan to go grab the eggs from the chicken over there. Go clean up the stall over there with them goats. Just like you do on a regular farm land. Except for this was a movie. Okay, but I digress. All right, verse 11. And after he brought forth Arpachshad, Shem lived 500 years and brought forth sons and daughters. So this dude already had 2 of the main children. And then when he was 100, he had another son, and that was 2 years after the flood. And then he lived for hundreds of years more and continued to be fruitful and multiply. So those people that say it don't make sense that we all came from one little family, read your Bible. These people were here. And we always say because the longevity of life was real, right? But you're talking about people who lived hundreds of years and brought forth multiple generations in their time to populate the earth. Just putting it out there. It says, now we're going to focus on this son that he had 2 years after the flood. So it says, and Arpachshad lived 35 years and then brought Shelah. So at 35, he brought Shelah. Okay. And after he brought forth Shelah, Arpachshad lived 403 years and brought forth sons and daughters. Now notice that this is the only part of the account. They're not going into depth with the mother children. They didn't go through Japheth's people at all. They just said these are the islanders. For Ham's people, they highlighted the people they need to highlight just because they're very valuable to the story that we're about to encounter as far as journeys through those days. And then when they get to Shem, they highlight intricacies, like just they go specifics right into the family because this line is so important. I'm not trying to be spoiling, the experience we're going through together, but the Messiah came through this particular line right here. So why wouldn't they go into specifics with this line? To show you the plan that was already set in motion this whole time. And I'm saying it like that because we're about to hit these people through these pages. And I'm showing family relations. I want to show exactly where they were. It makes sense to set up and do specifics of Shem's line because everybody from that line is giving us facts of the Messiah. And you're going to see things the Messiah did when he came that had already happened before he even existed. It was like they were the test runs. I don't even want to call it the test runs because it was needed from the people that we're about to go through. So not the test runs, but like things, it just makes sense. I don't want to give too much. I don't want to spoil it. I want you to come with me on this journey so that you can get everything. But I remember, and I've even taught on this, that there is nothing new under the sun. Even when it comes to stuff in here, there was nothing new under the sun. After it was done, it just redid itself again differently. Like, I don't want to make it confusing for you guys, but I don't want to give you the meat, right? I want to give you like a little teaser. Let's just put it like this. When we go through cities and who went to these particular cities and what happened inside of these cities, you're going to see a pattern that it didn't just happen one time, it happened multiple times with different parts of the family. That's how I'm going to put it. That makes sense in my mind. I hope it makes sense in yours. Let's continue. So remember, he had lived 35 years. And then brought Eber, and then, no, let me back up. So we're going back to 11, chapter 11, verse 12. That says, Arpachshad lived 35 years and brought forth Selah. And then after he brought forth Selah, Arpachshad lived for 403 years and brought forth sons and daughters. And Shelah lived 35 years and brought forth Eber. And after he brought forth Eber, Shelah lived 403 years and brought forth sons and daughters. What makes it very important is because when we go back to Genesis 9, 10, 11, when we're doing a paraphrase of the children on the genealogy, when they do Shem, they call his people, they call Shem the father of Eber. Where's my genealogy page? And so that lets you know that this is very important because they're calling it that way. Just remember I told you last time in the video how they acknowledged that Shem and Japheth were family, and they kind of put Ham out there as the black sheep because of stuff that was going on with him. Well, when they do this, when they do Shem's people, the whole tribe, they call it the children of Eber. Now, it's not true that it's the children of Eber because there's more children and offspring that came from Shem. But the one they highlighted out was the children of Eber. So we know that that particular line from Shem is the highlighted line, meaning that's the line that we really need to pay attention to And you're going to see why it's that particular line that's very important. Even in the next chapters that happen, it's going to start already. It's going to be a son of Eber that comes out. Even though that other children, Shem had this particular line, just like when we did Ham, Cush particular line was highlighted over the other lines. But there were important people in all the lines, and they all going to have their time on the stage, you know, in the spotlight. But it was Cush's line that was particular. Same thing here. There are a lot of sons coming out of this line, but it's going to be Eber's line that is particular to the overall story. But all are important. All right. And then Eber lived 34 years and brought forth Peleg. So do you see what's happening here? Because remember, we just read in the summarization chapter of 10 that Shem had these sons, and then out of these sons was these sons, and these sons became these sons, and then came Peleg, who the earth was divided amongst. So it wasn't like flood, power. It didn't happen like that. That's the way it's written because we don't have all the details of every story. But because they're putting details into people and their position on the earth, it gives you the time frame of these stories. Open your eyes. See, we learn these as individual little bitty stories. Oh, the Tower of Babel, Noah's flood, this, that, and we keep it separate and not use it as timelines to understand what was going on in the earth from here to there, what was going on in the earth from there to there. And that's what we're doing together. That's why we're here right now. So remember, I just read to you that Eber lived for 34 years before he brought forth Peleg. And after he brought forth Peleg, Eber then went on to live 430 years and brought forth sons and daughters. And it continues to go through. So we're going to stop right there at Peleg, and we're going to go back so we can really get a numbers game with them, right? So if we go up a little bit more. So Shem was 100 and brought forth Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. When Shem was 100. And that was 2 years after the flood. This way you get your paper and your pencil. Come on, do the math with me. Go on, get your stuff. Pause the video, get your paper, get your pencil. Here we go. Let's do it together. Because it makes sense. It makes sense. And I love that the Bible just makes sense and we just didn't figure it out. So put Shem 100 and then put like a little arrow or whatever and put that he had his third son. According to the scripture, that was his third son, who was Arphaxad, and then put in parentheses 2 years after the flood. All right. Then when you go down, because we all need to know, okay, so Shem lived all these 100 years. We ain't worried about that part now. He had a good long life and he had a lot of children. Good for him. All right. So then we're going to go down to your boy, the son. So then you're going to say, okay, after he brought, so then you're going to say, well, Arphaxad was 35 years old when he had Shelah. Okay? And again, nice long life, a lot of children. God bless his soul. Then we're going to put Shelah had 30 years. He was 30 when he brought forth Eber. Okay? Again, nice long life, yada, yada. And then put Eber was 34 when he brought forth Peleg. Now do the real math. Where's my calculator? Here we go. So 2 years after the storm. I'm gonna start off with 2 years. So the flood happened. 2 years, Arphaxad came. All right? Get that man 35 years old. So if it was 2 years when he was born, and he was 35, 2 years after the flood, okay, in your mind. He lived 35 years before he had Selah. Boom. Selah was 30, add another 30 right there. Boom. Eber was 34, add the 34. Boom. So, that is 99 years of folk. That's 99 years. I didn't count the 2 years yet. That's 99 from Arphaxad being 35, Selah when being 30, Eber being 34, to Peleg. Not add the 2 years of the storm. So 101 years from the storm to the earth being divided. 101 years from the storm, the flood happening, to the point where they had to go and divide the earth because they were doing stuff they weren't supposed to do and trying to build a stairway to heaven. I'm gonna stop it right there. When we come back, we're gonna continue with this because now that Peleg has already said, you know, I was born when the earth was divided. Now we get into real stuff. But we need to go back just a little bit more, and put some things back into the puzzle where it's supposed to be so it can fit real nice. And then we're gonna head on and keep going. So I'll see you next time for the weekly.